Now, why can't I see? Why can't I see it on Twitch? Hmm. Well, maybe I'll have to give it another minute or two, so Twitch can be like, "Oh, shoot, there's actually dude's actually streaming." We'll see how that goes. Because, like, in theory, I'm streaming. So, like, where is it? Like, like, it should be here. Okay. Okay, so I have been able to find myself finally. My audio is working, which is importante. And I'll give everyone a minute or two to get in here while I find some um doo boo 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 background music. Sure. Can have these funky fresh beats going in the background. Well, it looks like, as is tradition, for some reason I can't get my, anything to work on my computer, so I have to go off of my, everything off the laptop, so that's fun. Or not the laptop, the iPad. But alright, let's get going then. Just gonna go downstairs and grab my drink. So I have some water so my throat doesn't try to die on me midway through. And then we'll get going. Alright. Back at the computer, ready to go. So let's do it. Good evening, everybody. This is Mark, and I'm here with another Horsehead Weekly for week number 12. Skipped a couple weeks, but I'm back, as it's important for me to let you guys know where you sit for the playoffs, playoff pushes, who's doing what in the Eliminator, how everyone's feeling. So let's jump into it, and as always, we gotta go fast. So, last week, very eventful week. A lot of teams playing to not die. A lot of teams playing to maybe clinch a playoff berth. Teams playing to maybe get the number one seed. Get some buys locked up. A lot of people playing for a lot of stuff. And this is how it ended up shaking out. I ended up taking down, in glorious fashion, I ended up taking down Mike, the number one contender at this point. So he got knocked down by me. That's right. I killed him. Handed him his only third loss of the season, which I believe means that he is now my bitch. Take a sip of water for dramatic effect. So yeah, so that's it. I think that's it. I can end the show now. That's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that I beat Mike. That was cool. It came because Mike's team absolutely imploded on Monday night, as did the actual teams playing Monday night with all the injuries and all the issues that happened and people just playing poorly. So, but yeah, so I got the victory there. In other news, this, just so people know as we get into some of these other matchups, this is being recorded, of course, on Wednesday night. Thursday morning is when they process all of the stat corrections. So, we've seen stat corrections go wild before. I had won a game, went to bed, woke up, had lost the game, as did a few other people at some points throughout the season. So, for now, just be aware that this is pre-stat corrections. We could see. I'd probably say it's safe if you are within 5 points. There's a shot, and if you're within 10 points, there's a really distant shot. 5 points could be you just get a couple. Maybe you get a sack added to your score, and your opponent loses a tackle. Something like that. 10 points would mean that you would need, multiple players to get multiple tackles added while the same happen on the opposite happen on the opposite side, where multiple people get taken away. So, that being said, there is the possibility that Sean ends up losing last week and Tyler ends up getting the win. It's unlikely, as stat corrections very rarely actually do anything. But it is important for me to point out, because I do want to make sure everyone's aware of the situation. That so for right now, everything I'm talking about will be assuming the stats are correct right now. And for things like the Roto, because it's so much work to go in and enter in every single person's scores manually, I'm gonna hold off on that, and I'm just gonna say, okay, cool. Um, we're just gonna go off of what happened last week, so you'll only get you only get people's scores up to 10th, the 10th week. So just so everyone's aware. So that all being said, so Sean ended up taking out Tyler last week, putting Tyler on the brink of elimination, but 6 wins is still technically possible to be the score that gets you into the playoffs. So that is a very important thing to remember. But it does mean that Sean definitely increases chances. He's not locked yet, but he is at the door, hand on the latch, ready to turn that boy over and make it be locked. Um, as Yeah, so that's the thing that's happening there. Then we have it in the third game of the week. We had what could have been a put-away game. It could have been James getting a victory, and with that victory, he would have had the playoffs almost locked up as well. He would have given himself an outside shot of getting a bye, put himself in great position moving forward. But Malcolm wasn't going out like that. He wasn't going to get himself eliminated from playoff contention by losing that game. So he went out, he put up 140, and he took it down. So congratulations to Malcolm with his 140 points, destroying his brother from another mother. So he moves on up to 5-6, putting himself only one game back of a playoff spot. And then we had there is one division every year, and it rotates as to what division it is. That just seems to have either bad luck or bad players or whatever ends up happening. And we had a battle between those two teams from that division. It was the battle of the brothers, and yeah, it did not disappoint. Surprisingly, they both put up very high scores, 132 to 139, and Matt M ends up taking it down, beating out his brother Dave. And with that, that means that those two teams are now tied with Nick, who ended up losing to Matt S, despite Matt S not even breaking 100. So it basically puts those three teams all on a level playing field with 2 games left to go. And both teams get a crack at Nick. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how this ends up playing out in this division, because this could incredibly easily be like a 6-7 team making in with a divisional win. If one of these teams ends up popping off, or it could be just a mess at 5-8, everyone tied, and then I have to go to breakers, and that just be a heartbreaking for one of the teams who ended up not being able to make the playoffs because of that. Moving on, though, we have Matt S, who ends up winning despite only picking up 98 points. Absolutely phenomenal. That's just crazy. So he ends up getting the victory, moving up to 8 wins, tying himself for first with the champ from last season, Mike. And finally, we had a battle in my division between 2 5-win teams now, as in order to stave off potential elimination, Jerry ends up getting the victory, going to 5-6, tying his record with Doug, and now holding a foolproof tiebreaker over Doug, because I believe he is now 3-0 in the division. Jerry is, which means that he cannot, if there is a tie in the division, he will win the division, I believe, unless it's a tie with me, but that's very difficult / impossible to happen for us to end up having a tie. Basically, he's in a good spot to win the division if he can catch up to me and beat me in week 13. But if he loses next week and I win next week, it's all over for him. But we'll get to that in a minute, because I have all the playoff information coming up later on. But for now, that's what happened last week. Moving on for the standings. In the standings, as I've been alluding to this entire time, we have in the Schoolhouse, I am ahead of everybody at 1-1, but I have 2 divisional games left to play, and if I end up beating Doug, I move to 2-1, and then, so on and so forth. Everyone knows how winning and losing works. I don't know why I'm explaining that. But it's a very tight division in Skullhouse, as it is for the Insiders, with everybody still being alive at this point to win the division. The other 2 divisions, not so much. As of now, Matt S. is a single, has 1 as his magic number. For those of you who follow baseball, magic numbers are the number of wins you need or losses by the team directly underneath you in order for you to clinch a berth in the playoffs. Matt S. has his magic number as 1, not to make the playoffs, but to get a bye and also to get a win his division. Because as of right now, he is 2 games ahead of James with 2 games to play, and he is 3 games ahead of anybody besides James to claim that bye. So James could still get a bye. He wins out. Matt S. loses out. Actually, that is not true. Matt S., I'm sorry. Might be everybody. Matt S. has clinched the division now that I'm looking at the divisional records, because even if he loses out, he will be 2-2 in the division. If James wins out, he will be 1-3 in the division. Tiebreakers go head-to-head first. They will be tied 1 win apiece in the head-to-head. So then the next tiebreaker is divisional record. Matt S. will win on divisional record, being at 2-2 versus 1-3 for James. So Matt S. has already clinched the division, and as such, because he has clinched the division, we would need another divisional champion to get up to him and tie him for the bye, and I'm the only one who can still do that. I have to win out. He has to lose out. And then I don't know who won between me and him on the head-to-head. I'm sure that is something that I can look up very quickly, because I'm just curious. Is this over for him? No, I beat Matt S. in week 2. So while it is still highly difficult for me to end up getting a bye, if I win out, Matt S. loses out, I have myself a bye. Same thing with me winning out and Mike losing out, I have myself a bye, assuming that there is some way that Sean doesn't end up winning that division, which there isn't. So, as of now, the winner of the Outsiders division is guaranteed a bye. Just depends on who gets it. So that's interesting. Okay, so the Outsiders, the way it looks, whoever wins the division, they get a bye. That's cut and dry. That's one of the buys gone. The person who doesn't get the bye is, if it's Mike, he's guaranteed a playoff spot right now. If it's Sean, he's probably getting a playoff spot. Not locked in yet. Only probable magic number of 1. If you go up to Kathy's Kids, what we have here, we have Matt S. sitting atop. He is only guaranteed to make the playoffs. He is not guaranteed to win the division, and he is not guaranteed he is guaranteed to win the division. So he's guaranteed to make the playoffs, guaranteed to win the division, not guaranteed to win himself a bye but he has a magic number of 1. So I lose a game or he wins a game, that's it, he gets a bye. So next week we could know the 2 people who are on bye, and they'll basically have 2 games off, because the 1 and 2 seeds don't matter because they play each other in the first week of the playoffs. In a non-elimination game where the winner gets to choose before the end of the day on Tuesday who they are going to play from the 2 non-bye teams. So they can't. So if it's Matt S. and Mike get the bye, they can't play each other. Mike wins and he goes, all right, run it back, and then have the other 2 fight. No, he has to pick from the from seeds 3 through 6 who are still alive who he wants. So that's what's going on with that right now. I'm going to get into more stuff later because it's very complicated and there's a lot going on right now. So that is what is going on right now for the standings. Moving on from the standings, though, we have the Eliminator. I did not update the Eliminator on the slideshow because it's just difficult to do. I have to enter in everybody's stuff, blah, 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 blah. Moral of the story is, Mike did not beat Doug last week, but they were within 3 points, so there is always a possibility of a stat correction, leading to Mike getting $50 in his pocket by the end of the day tomorrow. But as of right now, if everything holds, Doug has 2 strikes, Mike has 1 strike, and they're the only people left. So Doug has succeeded in winning 1 week. He has to win 2 more weeks. If he does, he gets the $50 from the Eliminator. If he falters on either of the next 2 weeks, weeks 12 or 13, and loses to Mike in a head-to-head game for $50, basically he is eliminated. So I know I'm rooting for Doug this week because I think it'd be really, really interesting. Well, not to beat me, but to beat Mike because I still want to beat Doug this week. But I want him to beat Mike this week and then have week 12 or week 13 rather be a just add that extra tension there where Mike, while he might have been guaranteed a bye at that point, he could be sitting there being like, oh shoot, I still have $50 on the line. I need to get a win here. So I think that just to add some more drama there. But that is what's going on with the Eliminator. And also congratulations to Jerry. Jerry ended up scoring the most points last week, making it the second week in a row and the second week at all that somebody who was eliminated scored the most points. As is to be expected with only 2 people being left in the Eliminator. Moving on to Roto World, as I said before, because of stat corrections, I'm not going to sit here and mess around. I'm just going to let this sit, and then tomorrow I will update everyone's Roto stuff. It's not going to, I don't think it would change too much, but hey, you never know. So if you don't like what you see here, wait a day, it'll change. As of right now, at QB, we have Dave M. and Sean as the 2 front runners to take home 15 points there, but we have Tyler very close behind with only 25 points back, making it a very, very interesting fight at the top for quarterback. Moving on to running back, we have Mike still far and away in the lead of most of the other players in the league, but James is still slowly but steadily climbing up. As I mentioned before, so he is now actually I think he might have fallen because of that 60-point versus 17.1. I don't know how long I've gone since updating you guys. Basically, it's Mike and James fighting for the top, but a lot of people with a lot of points a game gain down in the middle. For wide receiver, we have Mike, Jerry, and James all fighting up at the top there with a 5-point swing from first to third. That's a very important fight to keep an eye on. And Nick and Matt S are still there. We still have 6 more weeks to have stuff added to this, which is over a third of it. So it's a lot of points to be gained or lost and moved around in. And then we have a pretty decent shelf there between Matt M and Malcolm. So a lot of people have a lot of movement they can still make there. At tight end, Matt S has lost Hooper, so he is no longer able to just sit back and coast to a tight end victory on the back of Austin Hooper. But he still has a pretty big cushion with Dave and Matt, the brothers, chasing after him. And Sean's there too. Sean is only 36 points back. It is completely make-upable. And then you just have a huge bunch of people from that 49 points up to 59 points. About 11 points there, separating a ton of people. So a lot of points to be gained or lost there. In Roto World, we have 2, 3, 4 players at defensive line all fighting it out. Tyler, Doug, Malcolm, and Sean all putting up great points week after week. Some on a hot streak right now, as is Malcolm. Some cooling off, like Doug, Daniil Hunter, not doing what he was doing earlier on in the season, which was absolutely destroying people. Last couple weeks, he's been kind of lukewarm, so he's fallen off and allowed Tyler to take that throne as the number 1 up at week 10. But a lot has happened last week. I know Doug didn't have a good week, but we'll see Tyler, Malcolm, and Sean who did the best next week when I update everybody. Probably on Thursday night, so I can have everything put together and have a really good show. Thursday night's Thanksgiving. All right, I guess I'm doing it on Wednesday's game day with you guys. Maybe, potentially. Someone... or maybe not, I don't know. Well, we'll figure it out. That's a future Mark problem, and by problem, I mean I'll probably avoid it by not making a show next week, or I'll make it on Friday. That's all. Yeah, I can do it on Black Friday. All right, Black Friday special next week. I'm doing a show on Black Friday. Anyways, moving on, we got linebackers. We have Mike and Matt M both putting up really good numbers there, but again, a lot of people putting up a lot of points. So, and a lot of things can happen. A lot. At defensive back, I just looked at how long I've been streaming. It's almost been half an hour, and I haven't even got through Roto World, so I'm just kind of dying already. For defensive back, I'm definitely making a run. Trying to catch up after a bad start. I know a lot of other people are also putting runs together on this. It looks pretty good right now with for Matt S, but only 24 points separate him and only getting 7 points. That's not a lot with a third of the way to go. And then finally we get to kickers who don't matter and no one loves because I'm no longer in the lead, so I don't like them anymore. And Mike has been putting up pretty good points the last 2 weeks. Didn't get good points last week with Bucker, but yeah, I mean he's just been doing a really good job last few weeks, so he has ended up taking the lead on that, pulling away from Tyler a little bit as well, putting a 6.5 point gap between him and second place. And then here we are with the pluses and minuses. Sean ends up being the biggest mover, falling 4 spots, which is definitely not great, but that is mostly because he had a couple first place positions that he lost over the last couple weeks, which caused him to plummet there. Mike still remains number 1, mostly thanks to his 4 first place finishes, but Tyler has moved up a bunch as well. His quarterback, kicker, defensive line, all looking very, very good. And if he can get his defensive back to get him even 3 or 4 points, that could definitely move him a lot closer to number 1. But it is still Mike's to lose. He's going to have to go cold for a couple weeks for people to catch him, but that is entirely possible. This week, what do we got going on? Well, we have some really interesting games going on. Myself versus Doug. It is an elimination game for Doug, so he must win. If he loses, he is just straight eliminated from everything. We have a very important battle for first place in the Outsiders division with Mike versus Sean. That is going to be one that's going to be very closely watched by me. And another one that's going to be really closely watched right underneath it is can James keep the dream alive of making the playoffs by winning the division and potentially clinching himself a bye as well? That's all hangs in the balance this week as he plays against his brother in a must-win for that scenario to play out. It is not a must-win for him to advance. However, he still has a loss to give before he gets tied by a bunch of people, and then tiebreakers come in. But if he wants to get in clean, a win this week definitely helps him get there, and definitely moves him in the right direction very, very quickly. We also down below we have another very, very important battle. I mean, all 4 of the non-rivalry games. As you guys remember, we picked rivals at the beginning of the season. This is the rivalry weeks where you play somebody against your division or your rival. And in the last non-rivalry game, we have Dave versus Nick in a game that very well could be an elimination game for one of them. As if Nick loses and the other 2 teams win, it's going to make it very, very difficult for him to get in. But that's all for future people to worry about. And then in the rivalry games, we have Jerry versus Tyler in a very, very fun rivalry game with both teams trying to stay alive. Jerry with the win here sets up a winner-take-all matchup next week between me and him, and potentially I'm not sure if that's guaranteed. No, it is, because we both have the breakers. I think we would both have breakers over Doug. So I think if he wins, it's winner take all with me next week. Because even if I win, it's winner take all. If he loses, he's basically out. If I win, and Tyler fighting to keep himself alive, who will also be watching the Selway battle, trying to figure out who is going to win. Because if Matt ends up pulling it off, and he gets a win, he is still alive going into the last week of the season. So that is what's going on this week. This is the game of the week from last week, which I did not update. The game of the week this week, I think it is without a doubt the brother battle between James and Matt. I think that it has bye implications. It has playoff implications. It has divisional implications. It is a matchup that is, Sunday Night Football worthy, if I dare say. Um, this is going to decide a lot of people's fates because if James wins, that means that he has effectively eliminated everybody with only 7 wins right now because they won't be able to catch him. That knocks out a ton of people from being able to make the playoffs by the so people are gonna have to go through the division if they want to get it. It also can eliminate potentially Malcolm if he ends up getting a loss um, this week. Same thing with Doug and Jerry. They could all just be eliminated with a loss this week from making the playoffs on the back of the wild card with that. So there's a lot going on there, and I think that is definitely going to be the game to watch. It might not be the highest scoring games because both teams are kind of limping into this one a little bit after last week, but I definitely think it's a really good one to watch, and I'm going to be keeping my eyes on it as well because it has the potential for me. I'm definitely going to be rooting for James because if he gets the victory, that gives me a chance at getting a bye and recouping my buy-in at the very minimum, which is something that I did not think was possible earlier on in the season with how bad my team was. But I've gotten real lucky at times, so I'm just going to take that and be really happy. So that's the game of the week that doesn't actually exist. Now we're going to talk about playoffs. I've been talking about a lot of these scenarios, but I'm going to put them on the board so everyone can see them. So what the playoff scenarios are at this moment, Doug is eliminated with a loss and a James win because at that point I will be 2 games up on him, so he cannot win the division, and James will be 2 games up on him, so we can't make it to the playoffs on the back of a wild card spot. So that's how he gets knocked out. Jerry is eliminated with a loss and I win and James wins. That's a little bit more complicated because Jerry can have the tiebreaker over me. So if he loses and I win, then he can't win the division, but he can still make the playoffs as a wildcard team, which is why James also has to win. So there's that going on. And I clinch a playoff berth / divisional win if I win and Jerry loses. If not, I'm pretty sure it comes down to the 2 of us next week, head-to-head, and basically a playoff game the week before the playoffs start. In the next division, we have Matt S. winning the division, which he already did, as we talked about earlier. So Matt S. already won the division. So he clinches a bye with a win, or if I lose. Those are his 2 paths. And that's over the next 2 weeks. Magic number of 1 to get a bye. Really easy for him to pull off if he so chooses. James clinches a playoff berth with a win and a Jerry loss and a Doug loss because those are the 2 teams behind him by 1 game. So that'll put him 2 games up, 1 week to play. Easy math. And Malcolm is eliminated with a loss and a James win. If he loses and James loses, that still puts him 1 game back of James. So the game next week he could use to leapfrog James and then hope in that scrum of people tied at 6 wins or 7 wins. Or no, it would be 6 wins at that point. He's just got to hope and pray that he can get in from there. If he ends up winning out and James ends up losing out. Other playoff stuff going on. We have Nick clinching the playoffs if he wins and Matt M loses because he currently that would put him at 3-0 in the division. Would not be able to be caught by anybody else. And at 3-0 in the division, that makes him untouchable for tiebreakers. So if he wins, he'll be in Matt M loses. That puts him 1 game ahead of everybody in the standings, and he owns the tiebreakers over the other 2. So no matter what happens, he will be in the playoffs. He cannot get a bye or anything. Don't even think about that. But it does guarantee him a playoff spot. Matt M is eliminated naturally in the opposite situation because Nick will have clinched. And Nick can also get eliminated if he loses and Matt M wins. I'm not sure why I wrote that. I'm not sure if it's true, but it sounds good to me. So I'm going to roll with it being true that there must be some kind of a tiebreaker thing potentially where if Matt M wins, then that means that he... Oh, this is what it is. So if Nick loses and Matt M wins, that means there are 2 teams 1 game ahead of him in his division. Those 2 teams play next week, which means effectively 1 team is guaranteed to be 2 games ahead of him going into the last week of play. So that is how Nick gets eliminated if he loses and Matt M wins. Same thing with Dave. If Dave loses and Matt M wins, Dave is eliminated because then the same situation set up. So that is what's going on with that. And for the final division, Mike clinches both the division and a bye with a win. Sean clinches playoffs with a win, and then he and Mike have fight with tiebreakers. And then going into the last week, if one wins, one loses, that's who gets the division. If not, if they both win, then we have the whole issue with, okay, who is the winner of the division, and then that person also gets a bye. Because as we stated earlier, the winner of this division gets a bye. And then that leaves Tyler at the bottom. Sadly, he is out of the discussion for winning the division and getting that bye, but he is still available to go out and get keep himself alive. If he wins and James loses, that puts him one thing away. And I'm getting a call right now from Nightline, people wanting my money from Clarkson. So that's kind of neat that pops up on my phone saying who they are. So I know not to worry about answering the phone right now because I'm in the middle of a podcast. So that's what's going on with that. Moving on to what we got going on elsewhere, we have Sean coming in at number 12 as we hit the rankings. And this is something that a lot of people are going to be like, that's aggressive. And it is. It's mostly because a lot of his players have not performed well or have been injured lately. Yes, he has Jalen Samuels on his team, which is a very good thing to have at this point because it looks like James Conner might be out another week. I mean, that's just a thing that happens, and if he is available, then I think he has a very good shot of getting a lot of touches, especially if against especially considering that their offense is down their number one and number two wide receivers as well, and their quarterback and their running back. It's just an absolute mess. They're missing people all over the place. He's probably going to be where they pipe the offense through, with Washington also getting some touches. So that is why I have. So that is a positive, but if Connor plays, then he's absolutely useless. Calvin Ridley hasn't looked great. Damian Williams just got hurt. Marlon Mack is he's doing good. It's just he's not great. And Keenan Allen is on a bye this week, and then next week he also is just kind of trash. Because as long as you have Philip Rivers throwing to you, I don't know if I can really trust him. And while Deshaun Watson's good, I mean, he didn't look good last week. I mean, yeah, he played a really good defense, and they took the air out of the ball because they're the Ravens and blah, 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 blah. But then when you look at the rest of your injuries, you have people like Evan Ingram, Emmanuel Sanders. They're both hurt right now and potentially not playing anytime soon. You have Miles Sanders, who was supposed to get the starting job, but now we got Jay Ajayi, maybe Jordan Howard coming back. You don't know what's going on there. So I think your team's just a bit of a mess right now. It's kind of falling apart at this time. So because of that, I'm going to put you down at number 12. Just, sorry, Sean. At number 11, we have Doug. Doug is in a very similar situation. Does he have a lot of really talented players on his team? Oh, hell yeah. He's got, Rodgers and Barkley and Connor. He's got Howard. He's got Diggs. But there's big question marks going on here. Like, is Connor and Howard, are they going to play? Is Saquon back to his old self? Or are they going to think about maybe shutting him down because he's the future of their franchise? And it's a good idea not to have him go out there and bust his ankle even worse than it already is, where, he requires surgery and being out a long time. That's not a good thing to have happen. So maybe you take a step back with Saquon and you say, okay, cool. We're shutting him down. Do the same thing with Connor, and then suddenly you're out your number one, number two running back, and you're starting every single week. Tariq Cohen and Jamal Williams. That's not looking really good there. You're flip flopping on your your tight ends between the number two tight end in Indy and a guy named Darren Fells, who, if you look at his statistics, is a great name for him because he just falls into the end zone. He's averaging, very, very low targets, very, very low yardage per game, but he's getting in the end zone, so sure, why not start him? Who cares? And then at your wide receiver position, it's not great either. I mean, I'm always afraid at this time of year of trusting anybody in New England who isn't, Belichick, basically, because you have the situation where they're going to start slowly shifting to their running backs, and then you have to play running back roulette with them because you never know who's actually going to be good on their team. And then your other two big names are Stefon Diggs and DJ Moore. Stefon Diggs has a bye this week, and then he has a pretty tough schedule going forward. And DJ Moore is good, not great, because he's splitting with Jalen Samuels, and you always have Christian McCaffrey on that team taking a bunch of touches. So all in all, very low on Doug as well. That's why those two are in the bottom class. Moving on, though, we have Matt S. He is the first person in the B class, and I wanted him to be higher, but then, he had a bunch of injuries and a bunch of bad things happen to him, and now he's in the same position as that I was talking about before, where you have issues where it's like, okay, how good has Zeke been lately? Well, he had a couple bad weeks lately. Was he good last week? Well, yeah, but was it good because he was getting good rushing numbers? I mean, he was up against Detroit and he only went 16 for 45. Yes, he got a touchdown. Yes, he got some touches elsewhere, but it was only, 2 touchdowns for Zeke should not result in an 18-point game. That should result in a 30-point game because he's already getting 100 total yards, a couple catches, and this has been a trend the last 2 weeks. He's just not getting the touches, not getting the yards, and he's making up for it last week by getting a bunch of touchdowns. And it's tough because he's a good player. I mean, I'm sure he'll bounce back, but if that is your stud on your team, that's kind of scary to look at. Now you have other really good players. You have Mike Evans on your team who has not been the best either the last 2 weeks. And then you look at, D.D. Westbrook, who's, was supposed to be the guy once Foles got back, and he only got 4 catches. I mean, and then you have other things like Austin Hooper's, how long is he going to be out? Robert Woods, how long is he going to be out? Are you going to be able to rely on Sony Michel? That's probably not a thing you can do. So you're here, you probably could be a class below, but I like a lot of the talent you have on your team more than the other 2 teams, so I decided to bump you up to this position. But your team's just been underperforming lately, but I think you're one big game away from me just jacking you up a bunch and moving you up pretty high in B class, if not up to A. But that being said, we have another guy, and it's Nick. I feel bad putting Nick anything other than 12th because it's been a pretty good meme the last little bit, and especially when you look at his team right now, it's just like a Christmas tree with how many freaking red lights it has. So let's see who he has who's questionable for this week on his team. He has Deebo Samuel, Sterling Shepard, George Kittle, Brandon Cooks, Juju Smith-Schuster, Matt Breida, Tyreek Hill, Raheem Mostert, and A.J. Green. Now, if all those players were playing, especially with Patrick Mahomes on a bye, I could see him having a hell of a team. I mean, if you told me before the season started that somebody would be starting Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mark Ingram, and Matt Breida with the tight end of George Kittle, a flex he's got, choosing between Brandon Cooks and A.J. Green. That sounds like a dope lineup. It's not August anymore, and that's a lot of talent, a lot of underperforming talent, though. Because of that, I got to put you down at number 9. If your whole team was healthy and performing well, that'd be a different story. But right now, you just got too many questions, and because of that, I got to dock you a bunch. So you are stuck at number 9. At number 8, we have Dave. Now, Dave's a unique-looking team because it's a team that has 3 very, very studly players, with Lamar Jackson being probably the best draft pick of the year, if I had to say, for him. Or potentially for anybody. I mean, when did this dude get picked up in the draft? Oh, that's right, the 10th round, 118th. And he's ranked number 1 in the whole fantasy football. He is insane. And he got him 118th. So bravo on that pickup. I I mean, it's just great. And then he also has two other studs with Nick Chubb, who has been absolutely, uh, you know, dominant in the middle part of the season. Lately, 116 yards, 92 yards. He's still getting his. He's just missing the touchdowns lately, which is going to come, especially with the schedule he has coming up of Miami against Pittsburgh, which is going to be a punch you in the mouth game. So I'm sure he's going to get a lot of touches there. Then he has Cincinnati, Arizona, Baltimore. Lots of points to be scored in those games. But, he still now he has Kareem Hunt, but Hunt seems to be taking away his pass catches, not necessarily the rest of his game, and he's averaging over 5 yards per carry this season, so there's no reason for them to turn away from him and hand the ball off to somebody else. So I think that he's still in a really good spot, and especially with some of these choice matchups coming up, he can be doing really good. Oh, and then you have Alvin Kamara, who is another player who's putting up over 4.5 yards per carry. He's great at catching the ball. Yeah, he was out for a few weeks there, and he had some injury issues, but it looks like he and Breeze are both healthy. And as long as Breeze doesn't completely deconstruct himself like he did a couple weeks ago, you were in a really good spot. Oh, and you also have Freeman when he comes back. You have Murray as your handcuff, and then you have Williams and Sutton and Boyd and a bunch of other people just kind of fill in at wide receiver and flex. So you're doing a great job. I really like your team. It's just you kind of got studs and duds going with your two running backs and your quarterback, and then your tight end is bleh. Your wide receivers are fine right now. I mean, Cortland Sutton, don't get me wrong, great talent, but when you consider who he has throwing to him, who is a guy, Brandon Allen, sure, not great. That's not great. And then you have Tyler Boyd who is having balls thrown to him by another guy, Ryan Finley. So it's not great. It's not great. Now Tyler Boyd squeaky wheel game this week coming. A lot of people are saying because he's been very vocal about he wants more touches. He's the future of the franchise. Blah blah blah. So just throwing it out there. Dave, like your team, don't like some of the situations that these players are in. So just be aware. That is why you're at number 8. And number 7, we have James. Is James at number 7 strictly for the memes? I can't say yes or no to that question, but the answer is yes. Realistically, he's probably a touch higher or a touch lower if I really want to take the time to analyze his team before I threw the slideshow together. I mean, I could have done that, but instead I decided not to, and here we are instead. And he's got a team. It's a spookier team than, for instance, Dave's team, but it's, and it has injuries kind of like Nick's team, but I think it has overall more studliness and it has the ability to do a lot better moving forward. So, for example, looking at his team, he's got Carr and Wentz, who both are Carr has been playing lights out the last couple weeks. Wentz, not so much, but you got to love his schedule coming up with Miami, Giants, Washington. I mean, that's just 3 games you can throw him in and just be like, sweet, 25 points. His running backs are also studs, as was in the previous slide with Dave, with both Cook and Aaron Jones. I mean, is Aaron Jones ever going to not score a billion touchdowns in a game? Who knows? But if you look at his points in the last couple weeks, it's pretty funny. He has got 45, 6, 16, 38, 3, 27. Dude's all over the place. Absolutely just bonkers banana pants. So it's a lot of fun to watch. Really hard to predict in football. And he has, 3 horrible matchups with San Francisco, Chicago, and Minnesota coming up. But he also has 2 great matchups with the Giants and Washington. So who knows what's going to happen with that. Speaking of who knows what's going to happen with that, he's got Kenny Golladay, who has been definitely hit hard with Matthew Stafford not being around anymore. He got 57 yards and 34 yards the last 2 weeks. Not very great. Tyler Lockett is supposed to be coming back this week. It looks like that bye week was a lucky break for him because he's going to be able to come back after that injury he sustained at San Francisco. And up against a very, very good defense for him to exploit. The issue being, he is coming across the country from Seattle to Philadelphia for a 1 o'clock game. That always definitely hurts the traveling team. So it'll be interesting to see if him and Wilson are awake and ready to rock and roll for that one. But I mean, I think he's going to be pretty good for this week, and I really like James's. The rest of his team is pretty decent. He's got Jared Cook, who I think is coming on pretty decently. Pascal is going to be definitely somebody you can use for a week or two while he tries to work through this last bye week. So we can get like Mecole Hardman and T.Y. Hilton back and stuff like that. So I definitely like his team. I think he's got some good stuff going on. So yeah, that's what's going on with James. Now we have Matt M. He's got a good team, and unlike the last two teams, it's not because of his running backs. He does have a good running back. He's got Josh Jacobs. That's a pretty good team. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever going to argue that. Or that's a pretty good player. No one's going to argue that. But then he's on Carlos Hyde, David Johnson. David Johnson's not good. He might not even have the starting job anymore. Or they might be resting him. Who knows? Yeah, it's not been great for him lately. So you basically have Josh Jacobs, Carlos Hyde, who's a guy on a good offense who can fall into the end zone for you, probably getting you around 8 to 10 points every week. Yay. Not great, but a guy. So I guess you're kind of relying on Kalen Ballage or Jay Ajayi to really bolster that running back core. So you better hope nothing happens to Josh Jacobs because he's kind of your shining beacon of light right now. But for wide receivers, I think you're doing pretty good. I think Allen Robinson's best days are still ahead of him, especially with Giants Detroit as his next few matchups. DJ Chark was supposed to be no bueno last week, especially up against, not because he was up against Indianapolis, but he was up against Nick Foles, who a lot of people thought, oh, he's not going to like him. He would, blah, blah, blah. Well, come to find out, he liked him a lot. 15 targets, 104 yards, and 2 touchdowns liked him. So that was quite something. But then you fall off again. Marvin Jones, I mean, he might be a thing with the new quarterback. We'll have to see how that ends up shaking out, if anyone's a thing. Sanu was injured. Watkins was only good that 1 week. But even with several weeks of there not being a Hill, so even if Hill is out long term, can you really trust him? I mean, Metcalf, he kind of feels boomer busty, but I mean, he had 3 catches for 13 yards and 2 touchdowns 1 week. I mean, I don't know. So that's why you're stuck in this tier and you're not moving up. But that being said, I do enjoy your team, and I am interested in seeing how it's going to perform and if it can get you into the playoffs. Which brings us up to A class and my team. My team is just fine. I think it's better than a lot of other teams, but as always, I'm high on my own supply here. I think I have one of the best defenses in the league with Jamal Adams, Bobby Wagner, and Melvin Ingram. So I don't really talk about defenses in this, but I think those are 3 really, really good players, and they're going to bolster my offensive numbers, which definitely need it. But I think I still got a good thing going here. I have Le'Veon Bell and Phillip Lindsay, who are both pretty good guys. And then I have OBJ and Devontae Adams, who are both... I mean, Adams, I think, is going to be really good going forward. I mean, he is Devontae Adams after all. But then we have OBJ, who is, not been good lately. I mean, so, I don't know. I like my team because I like my team because I like my team. And we'll see what happens. I might get absolutely obliterated this weekend by Doug and then just miss the playoffs. Have to fight to make it to the fight for 50 and then get stomped there. And then I just get sad. But hey, who knows? I think my team's decent at least. So that's it for myself. We get up to number 4 and we have Tyler. I think Tyler's team just was in a real rough way this season. I mean, if you just go, where is it? So you go here. I'm pulling up something on another screen here. So you go to his schedule, right? And look at how his team did. He put up 173 points and lost. He put up one of the highest points the next week in 122. It was a weirder week and lost. He put up 157 the week after that and lost again. Like, the dude had 3 absolutely brutal losses, 1, 2, 3 to start the season. And then he rallied back, peeling off a couple wins. But, he just seems like he's been having some bad luck here and there. And he's been playing well, and I think he's going to get rewarded, hopefully, in the next 2 weeks if he can pull off some wins and try to make himself make the playoffs that way. But it's just been kind of rough for him, a rough go of it this season. And I really do like his team, though, right now. I mean, Matt Ryan's been healthy, and he's got, a lot of weapons around him. Speaking of weapons, he's got Julio there, who, he's not been great the last 2 weeks out of the bye, but New Orleans has a pretty decent defense, and playing outdoors in Carolina isn't going to be super easy ever. So hopefully they can get right against Tampa Bay here. But then you look at the rest of his team, it doesn't get worse. He's got Chris Godwin, who I think is going to continue to be really, really good. Leonard Fournette, who is a top 10 running back, with Chris Carson, who's a top 10 running back. Could he use help at tight end? Yeah, but you can stream that this week. And then Hunter Henry comes back, and Hunter Henry, since he's come back, his worst game was 6 points, and everything after that's been double digits. That's absolutely insane to have out of a tight end this season, with so many tight ends just being bad. And then on top of all of that, who else does he have on his team? Tampa Bay running backs, in case one of them ends up becoming a thing. Devontae Parker, who is absolutely fantastic, and I wish I made a trade for him at the trade deadline instead of being an idiot and forgetting to send a couple offers over for him. And he's got Adam Thielen, too. Like, the dude's got an absolutely great team top to bottom. It's just he hasn't been able to put it together, and I don't know why. So hopefully, he can make the playoffs. I think that not because I want to face him, but because I think he deserves it. He has a really good team. He's been a great manager all season, especially considering how he entered the league this year. So I'm just really curious to see how he's going to go forward with this. And I wish him the best of luck because I think he does have a really good team and situation going on here. And that moves us up to the S class. And we have Malcolm up here. I probably should have Tyler up in the S class as well, but, I don't, so, Now, why do we have Malcolm up here? It's because he's been playing very well lately. The last couple weeks he's been putting up a lot of points. I think his team is overperforming, honestly, but at the same time, when you're putting up really good points, you kind of got to give the guy the nod and just be like, all right, cool. You're putting up great points. Just keep it going. And it's because, he's got Aaron Donald, who's been putting up really good points. Schobert's been putting up really good points. Von Bell's been doing fine, but, he's also got Harrison Smith on his team. Justin Tucker's been doing Justin Tucker things, just booting the ball. So he's been doing really well, and he's been getting by with, Jameis and stuff like that. I think he's been doing a good job. His team is not as good as Tyler's, but when you put up really good numbers, I kind of got to give it to you versus Tyler, who I think team is better, but hasn't been putting up as good of numbers. So with that, I got to give it to Malcolm. Don't like what you got on your team, but I like the numbers you're putting up. So with that, you get number 3. And number 2, we got Jerry. This is another very similar situation where you've been putting up really good numbers, so I got to like you, but I don't really like your team. You're streaming quarterbacks while you're waiting for Matthew Stafford to come back. He's not been, he was great earlier on the season, but now he's been not because he's been hurt. You have Kelsey and Eckler on your team, which is good, but Kelsey's on a bye this week. Eckler's also on a bye, but Eckler's also been losing a lot of work to Gordon. Yeah, he's been getting work in the passing game and 2-minute drills and stuff like that, but it's not the same workload you had earlier on in the season. Amari Cooper, apparently there's some injury concerns with him, but he was a full participant in practice on Wednesday, so maybe he'll be good. But he also has New England this weekend, and then he plays against Tre'Davious White the weekend after that. Then he goes to Chicago on a Thursday night on a short week. And then he has the Rams and Philly to finish out the season, but he's got a couple tough weeks coming up. But at the same time, he's been playing very well. I can't hate on it that much if it's been doing really, really good. I mean, just looking at the last few weeks, I mean, you're making it happen. You're making it work, dude. So I gotta hand it to you. How much of that was your defensive players? I mean, not really. So I don't really even know what to do at this point. Like with your team, it's putting up a lot of really good points, but it hasn't been great. Maybe you guys should have been down a tier, and Tyler and I, I don't even think I deserve to be an S-class tier. Maybe it should have just been Tyler and Mike at the top, because as we see at the top, as always, we have Mike. Did he lose to me last week? Yes, he did. Does that mean I should be number one overall because I beat the guy who's number one overall? Yeah, it does. But here we are anyways. He's not going to be relying on Philip Rivers moving forward. I can guarantee that. He chucked that guy into the sun, I would hope. No, he has him on his team still. Why are you rostering him? Just cut him. He's garbage. Just get rid of the dude. You going on him for his matchups? Oh, yeah. Oh, maybe that's why. Because he has such juicy matchups as at Denver, at Jacksonville, and Minnesota coming up. Yeah, I think that's what you're doing. You're holding on for him for that. Just cut the dude. Come on. You got a kicker that you might want to roster. I don't know. But anyways, I mean, Mike seems just really good still. He's got two top 10 wide receivers. He's got the number one non-quarterback in McCaffrey. He's got a top 2 or 3 quarterback in Russell Wilson. David Montgomery is trash. Zach Ertz is trash. But he's got like Jameson Crowder and Melvin Gordon. So he can make it work. Honestly, if you told me right now pick a team in the league and you have to use that team for the rest of the season, I think I'd be looking at Mike's team, looking at Tyler's team. But so probably those two should be 1 and 2. But at the same time, Tyler's team hasn't been putting up as many points lately as the other teams that I mentioned before. Like Malcolm, he's put up 140, 180, 140 the last couple weeks. Jerry went 140, 140, 177 the last 3 weeks. Those two have been absolutely crushing it the last couple weeks. Now, Mike put up an absolutely bonkers 225. But if you take that away and look at the week before that, he's barely broke 150 2 out of the last 3 weeks. And the other week, he put up only 121. So, honestly, I don't know what's going on because teams that are really good aren't performing. Teams that don't look as good are putting up big numbers. So at this point, I'm just going to amalgamate those two and say, here's your top 4, Mike, Malcolm, Jerry, and Tyler. But that's it for me for this week. I am exhausted. My throat is killing me. And I am still a little bit under the weather. So I will see you guys next time. But thank you guys for coming as always. And I'll see you guys next time.